Good day, my gamers, and welcome back to part 2 of the support video. My first video was more of a tips and tricks type guide. It covered a lot of ground, and while we will be learning a lot in this video as well, it'll definitely be a lot of information about a specific things, if you catch my drift. So why don't we just hop right in? Warding. Just a few tips before we get specific. Never put a ward down just because it gives good vision. It has to be useful defensively or offensively. I covered it a little bit in my first video, but basically, I always see defensive wards behind towers or behind other wards. That vision is completely useless. There's only a finite number of wards in the shop. Furthermore, I very rarely recommend putting wards down in common ward spots. While they do give the best vision, they will be useless if they're instantly dewarded. Not to mention, you're giving money to the enemy, you're giving them XP, you're wasting your own gold, and you're wasting one of the finite number of wards. The little circles that they've put down on the map are really useful for beginning players, but everybody can see those. Everybody can see where they should be warding and where they should be dewarding. So use those as a guide. Just look at the vision that they give and try and find another spot with the same type of vision. I will cover some of my favorites in this video. You could put the ward here since it gives vision behind the trees, in the lane, and a little bit by the rune to watch for pulls or ganks. But putting the ward over here helps make sure that you won't immediately get dewarded, and is really useful if the Dire has high ganking potential. This ward gives the exact same vision, but it will also block the camp and keep the support from pulling. While it does give good vision, using a sentry ward is more recommended since the other team gets nothing from dewarding it. Blocking a camp is the easiest way to tell the other team you've warded. You can also ward down here if there's a pudge on the other team, or if you're playing from the Dire, you can block the camp. Supports almost never put the sentry this far down unless they see you warding. From the Dire side, this is a good place to put the ward if you're pushing the tower. Depending on the pace of the game, at 5 or 10 minutes I like to put a ward in the enemy jungle, top or bottom. This will help when pushing the tower, watching for rotations, getting a gank on a jungling enemy, and for rune stealing. When warding these two pillars at any point in the game or on any side, you should always put a sentry in between them. Since I never recommend warding on standard ward spots, if you have a hero with an area reveal like Crystal Maiden's Crystal Nova or Vengeful Spirit's Wave of Terror, you could use that instead of an observer, but if the other team is not warding heavily, then do what you gotta do. The same goes for dewarding this spot. Not to mention, if you put the sentry here in the woods, it's much less likely they will deward it. While avoiding common ward spots, this is a spot I place my observer that almost never gets dewarded. Even if I place the sentries at the farthest point of the regular warding spots, it will miss this little spot here. It gives good vision, and I almost guarantee it will not be warded. Lane wards are a huge asset. They don't give the best vision, but they are rarely dewarded. In this instance, I use the tree line to ward without revealing myself. When playing from the Dire, this spot gives great vision mid-game, so your carry can farm and it keeps track of the rune. Warding from here almost guarantees you will not be spotted warding, and if you don't have to put yourself in a dangerous position to set it down. It also gives great vision, blocks a camp, and is almost never dewarded. 10 out of 10 ward for sure. If you're against an invis hero, chances are that laning stage will be filled with dewarded sentries. Even just putting the ward on the other side of the tree line can help you keep your sentry. Even if it's not giving the best vision, it's better than no vision. No matter what side you're on, this spot gives good vision of the rune and the river. A good rule of thumb is to put down your sentry and then put the observer just outside of the sentry range. This spot here gives good vision of the enemy hero and the river rune. As a position 5, I usually like to bring the mid laner a ward at the 5 or 10 minute mark, depending on how your lane is going and the ganking potential. Always note that as a 5, during the entire laning stage, the carry is a fragile little baby who needs to be babysat. If you can't leave the lane without them being ganked, then don't do it. Only leave when you're sapping XP. If you have to, buy a ward and drop it in base. Anyone else can grab it with the courier. This is another example of how to ward just outside the usual areas. This ward gives the same, if not better, vision. Dewarding the jungle is always a pain in the ass. There are so many warding spots, the most common of which is right on the shrine. I suggest placing your observer at the top of the bottom staircase or the top left staircase. Either pushing or defending, these spots are great even if the tower is there. Just don't get caught warding. Tinker wards are an anomaly in lower brackets. Most people, carry or support, don't even know that there are warding spots behind this tree line on the cliff. They give vision of the whole forest, and there are 4 of them across the map. Just look for the symbol. Pulling and stacking. While I mentioned lane equilibrium in my last video, I still wanted to give real, easy to follow examples of how to pull. From the Radiant safe lane, you'll want to begin your pull between the 15 to 18 or the 45 to 48 second window. Once you have your creeps, you will need to make sure the whole wave gets killed, or else you'll create a double wave and push the lane into the enemy's favor. You want to pull the second camp while the last creep is at half health. This will definitely take practice. Since timing can be so difficult, I instead recommend to start practicing pulling by stacking the small camp before you pull. If the enemy blocks a small camp or you don't feel your jungle is safe enough to pull from, you can break this specific tree in the big camp with a tango or a quelling blade and pull directly from the lane. If you time it during the 55 to 56 second range, you can stack the camp at the same time. When playing from the Dire off lane, pulling can be very difficult. You have to use the Radiant big camp. The pull itself is not particularly difficult, but this pull is easily countered. When pulling from the Radiant off lane, you'll have to use the Dire big camp. Pull time is between 15 to 18 or the 45 to 48 seconds, or when the creeps reach your tower. When pulling from the Dire safe lane, the small camp is just the same, but pulling from the large camp requires a little more magic. You have to find this tree, cut it with a tangle or a quelling blade just like earlier, and pull through the trees between the 15 to 18 second mark. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you enjoyed this format. If you much prefer the style of the first video where it's more tips and tricks, then let me know in the comments down below, and if you haven't seen my first video, then it will be linked in the description box below if you would like to. I will see you guys in the next guide. Bye!